Today we've got this fascinating 1820s granite tramway, made of granite, not steel, and you've got this wharf just over here which has been restored by the fantastic Stover Canal Trust. This is the Whitelake Channel of the River Teign, and this leads on to the Stover Canal. Now, this is a canal situated in Devon. It wasn't connected to the main network. It was used for transporting goods locally, and then they get transshipped and sent off, mainly to London and the Midlands. But we are here today to see there's a lot of work going on this canal, especially at the other end where we're going to walk right up to. It's only about 1.7 miles long. It's not the longest canal in the world. The very first thing that we're going to see here is what I think is a floodgate. So there was a big basin here, and this was there to allow all the ships all the boats to moor up, ready to go down at the right time. But when the tide was up, this is all tidal here, so these gates would have just been shut up and held that water back. You can still see evidence of the gates on both sides here. Actually, you've got the wood just down here as well that's still sticking up, and there's a cross beam across there as well. And actually on this side you can see part of the gate there as well. So this basin was here to allow the goods to wait. Most of the goods from here went to London and to the Midlands. There's very good reasons for that, which we'll get into as we get further up through. I'm not too sure if the transshipment was here or further down, but they would have then gone off down onto the English Channel, and I imagine up through probably the Way and Arun. Otherwise they'd have had to have gone all the way around Cornwall and up through the S7. There was plans for a canal to link both the English Channel and the Bristol Channel and the River Severn, but that never got completed, unfortunately. And then we've got Jetty Marsh Lock, which is just here, and this was rebuilt in granite, which is one of the goods that was sent to London to build a lot of the houses up in London. This has since been built over. You can see this culvert with an abandoned railway just up there, although that may not stay abandoned for long. So this was a railway that eventually led to the decline of the canal, like many railways did, and this was built in the 1860s and is the Newton Abbot and Moreton Hampstead line. Like I say, it's currently closed, but there has been calls for it to reopen. It was used for passenger traffic and massively for freight, and I think there's plans to use it for freight again. So this railway would have gone across the top of the lock. So the usual story happened. The railways came, trade declined on the canal, but it didn't close the canal completely, just sort of slowed things down for them, and it wasn't closed until 1939. And just as we get to the top here, there was an old overflow, like spillway that ran down. So I think that's what this bridge is for here. I don't know if it was ever used for a towing path as well. I'm not too sure. You can see the old channel coming through there. Look. So the top end of the lock is just here. I'm not too sure how original this bit is. And you've got like the other side of that culvert under the railway there. I don't think there's any sign of any bridge left for that railway. So I imagine that's probably one of the bigger projects that needs to be done to restore this canal. And again, that feeder channel ran around the side there and comes up just where this little bridge is here. So we have about 3/4 of a mile of channel like this. And as you can see, it's pretty clear. It's a bit overgrown, but you know, this doesn't take long to clear. And I think that's quite a good setting for the canal, really. It's got a lot of potential to be opened. Unfortunately, like I said, it's going to be like a standalone canal. The only way to access it will be to get your boats dropped in or to come up through sort of the English Channel and onwards. You can do that on other canals where you go up rivers like either Thames or the Severn and stuff like that. So it's not an impossible feat, it's just not ideal. You can really see the potential here. You've got the canal running through here. You've got the old abandoned railway going up through there. Whether that will be reused is a different matter. But can you imagine this all cleared, full of water, running boat trips on a nice summer's day in Devon, not far from Torquay and Newton Abbot and various other places. And imagine if a steam railway was put in on this old line. The track's still there, so it wouldn't take a huge amount of work to allow a slower running of a steam railway. Boat trips running down here, steam trains running past. It would be a fantastic area, and I think we'll do very well in the tourist area that is Devon. So up to the next section with structure, and we have Teignbridge here, and we've got Teignbridge Lock, which barely survives just over here. The reason this barely survives is it was not rebuilt in granite like the rest of the canal was. And on this side we have the clay cellars. Now the clay cellars are historically important. They're one of very few remaining clay cellars left in the country, and they were used for storing clay as it came down the canal. It was all temporary storage. Now ball clay was massive here. Now ball clay, if you've never heard of it, is a very fine clay, and its properties are very light with stuff like Wedgwood, because it's very white, it's very clean. And this was the main reason this canal was built, was to transport the clay from Bovey Basin just up ahead, which was an area which spanned quite a bit of area to sort of Newton Abbot and onwards, and they dug the clay out of the ground and transported it down the canal from the basin we're going to go up to the Midlands where Wedgwood was based. Just a slight detour from the video, we've got this very cool little crossing house here, and this is the same railway that we had going past us. This is, like, as you can see, very abandoned, but it's quite cool to see these old level crossings and sort of crossing houses still in place. So yeah, ball clay was originally known as pipe clay, because if you saw the old pipes and pipe stems that still exist and I'd found regularly in the canal, they're made of a very white clay, and that was kind of a thing from about the 1500s when tobacco was first brought over and smoked regularly. But obviously the Chinaware industry found a better use for it. Now, it was known as ball clay because when it was dug, they used to dig it into cubes and they used to obviously stack it up, and as it was being transported, it used to round off from sides and start to look like a ball. So that's the meaning behind that. Let's take a look over to this lock now and see if we can actually see anything in here. So just drop down into the lock. Here's the bridge we just walked across with the clay cellars just there, and this was the original lock. It's been very filled in with what looks like dumped goods from the bridge, and as you can see, there's not really a lock here anymore. I can't even see any of the walls, in fact. So granite became the second major source of revenue for this canal, and they had a load of granite mines beyond the end of the canal. The family decided to sort of dig them and transport the granite down the canal. So ball clay is formed by the degrading of granite over a long period of time, and you've got the Bovey formation across here, which produced Bovey coal, which is, I think it's lignite it's called, and that was used in like the local kilns and steam engines and stuff, but wasn't very efficient, wasn't very economical to mine to use. So in the decade before the railway came, in 1854, they moved 1,000 barges of ball clay down the canal. That's a lot of barges, so you can see just how profitable this canal was. And then we've got the Fishwick feeder, which is one of, I think there was 3 different feeders into this canal, and this came from, there's a Fishwick house just up here somewhere. As you can see, it was only a few goods that would move down this canal, and this land was all owned by a family, and James Templar II, who inherited the whole estate off his father, James Templar I, built the canal between 1790 and 1792. That's when it was originally cut. It was just used for his family's products. It contained 5 locks in total. Like I said, most of them were rebuilt in granite, apart from the last one we were to. But right up ahead of here, we've got probably one of the more interesting sites on the UK canal network. And as far as we're aware, this is the only one of its kind. And this is Graven Dock Lock. And as you can see, it looks a little bit different. Now, it wasn't originally built like this. This was a standard lock when it was built. Would have ended there.
Well, here we are at the Graving Dock, which was restored starting in 2015. It was obviously a major job. There were trees growing out of the walls of the canal. This was full of silt, so there was a lot of clearance work. I think it took a couple of years to get going. We had help from the Waterway Recovery Group. We had great help from local contractors because these granite blocks had to be moved. The funding came from the Association for Industrial Archaeology in the main, plus others. The whole thing came to a great conclusion, I think you'll agree.
So when the railway opened in the 1860s, they lost their barge repair depot, which was on the next lock further up. So they decided to do this here. They knocked the wall down, I think that's the eastern wall, and they built this, and you can see where they would have had to put timbers in. They would have put a boat in, and when they let the water out, the boat would sit on those timbers and they could do their repairs. Now, the only place I can think of on the whole network that has anything remotely similar to this is on the Moll and Brett Canal on 14 locks, where they've got the mystery lock. But that's widely believed to be a passing point on a triple, not quite a staircase, but nearly a staircase type lock. So this is thought to be completely unique.
This is the boiler that was reconstructed. It was used to bend the planks for the hull of the boats, which would come out of the graving dock for repair. This whole unit had to be moved from a lock further up, which was where the boatyard originally was. There's a boiler in there. There was a fire lit underneath. Water was put in there. Steam was produced, which went into the steam box, and that's when the wood was put in. steamed, got more pliable, so it could be bent. The boiler was in situ, but it was in the canal. Some local scallywags had put it in the canal. That was retrieved. The brickwork was rebuilt by one of our volunteers. This was all done with permission from the local council. This is a listed structure, so we had to get permission for that.
Lock gates are still there again, similar to that first lock. You can see, well, the stop lock, you can see bits of them in. It's absolutely incredible to see these things still here after all these years. So let's just have a quick look in here. So this is the old, you'd have had the old paddle gears here, and this is where you would have drained water from the pound above into the lock to raise the level of the water in the lock to go down the canal, which is pretty cool to see. It's all in very good condition. Being granite, these are rock solid, these locks. And then you've got the old timber in there for the old gate that would have sat in here. So up towards Teigngrace now, and behind that pylon there would have been a massive boatyard, and that would have been the barge repair depot for this canal. And this is all quite fascinating around here. So this is Teigngrace Lock and Bridge, and just on the edge of it is the Locks Bridge Tea Garden, which is a lovely little spot on this canal to come for a cup of tea or some kind of nice afternoon. See the old bridge coming across, and the locks itself, which are in very good condition. Got this lovely steelwork up on the side here. You've got rollers, look. You've got old, that's where they used to bang on and bend everything on the forge, the anvil. I'm not entirely sure what that is. That looks like some sort of pulley system. It could be from an old semaphore maybe. Old drills and all sorts. But this building was the old canal depot here, and this was taken over by the railway when the railway came, and the railway is just here. So they lost all of this yard and they moved it down to Graydon Docklock. There was once a station up here fairly close by. This building wasn't the station, despite this absolutely fantastic awning on this cafe. The lady's husband built it during COVID, and you can see they've got the old pillars here which were from a reclamation yard. It's fantastic awning over the top. It looks original. It fooled me to start with. But yeah, please do pop in and have a look at them if you can. This lock will need a bit of work, definitely some pointing, but it doesn't look to be in an awful state. And you've still got another very cool feature here. Look, you've still got the gates in place there. Very rotten, but it's still there.
This is Teigngrace Lock. Originally held 2 barges end to end. We have found a map, a very early map, but undated, indicating there was perhaps a dry dock here. It's evident something was here because of the change of granite, the construction. As I say, it was no date on the map. It's obviously long gone, so we'll never know. But it's one of the mysteries of the Stover Canal.
This is the bed of the canal here. The lock is literally just there we've been to with that lovely cafe, and up here is the original station, and it's still there on the line. Look, looks like a small halt rather than a main station. This was originally a broad gauge railway and was narrowed much later. It was a GWR railway, and Brunel loved his broad gauge. And right next to us here is a bit of track. And what they did when they pulled up all that old broad gauge, they reused the track to make fence posts, and this is a very good example of that. And this brings us up to Venford Basin, which is right ahead of us here. And this is where all the ball clay used to be brought down by horse and cart from the basin around here. And this is an area which has been massively restored, as you can see. It's currently empty, but only because they're trying to do some repairs. But this is an absolute treasure trove of archaeology here. So you've got that wonderful crane over there, which was rebuilt to what they think it was. It's not the original crane. They found, one of the many things they found when they were digging this all out was this post here, and this is part of the original crane. So this would have been the bottom of the crane. You'd have had a gear in on the bottom which would have turned it, and then you'd have had the actual crane on the top here.
This again was another structure that was obscured by silt, which comes over from the River Teign when it floods, totally obliterated by that. It took several years to dig it out, and then we came up with the idea of putting a small bund or dam at this end with an idea of filling the basin so it looked more like a feature as it was. This has been proving difficult to keep the water in, unfortunately. We've tried the original clay, which leaked. We tried putting special powder in, which tried to seal the leaks, but didn't work. We've recently, in June this year, spent a lot of time lining it with proper liner. I'm not sure what's happening on that at the moment because we still haven't got any water in it, but it is summer.
But this is what's really fascinating. Can you see this through here? This is a granite tramway. These go for miles. And when James Templar II died, who built this canal, his son George took over. And he exploited the fact that they had the quarries at Heathfield and constructed this granite tramway. And you can see that this is a crossing point to two different tramways which goes down, and there's various other routes that come in through here. The carts would have been pushed down through here, and it would have been a lot easier than bring it by horse and carts. So they've still been pulled by horse. Here's a rebuild of one of the carts. So when this granite was brought down here, this became a major source of revenue for the canal.
Venford Basin is the terminus of the canal. The canal reached here in 1792. This is where most of the clay was loaded, and latterly the granite came down from the quarries there, was loaded onto the barges on a crane similar to this. This is our best idea of what the crane looked like, given that there are no diagrams of what was there at the time. There is a railway embankment behind that, which wasn't here in 1792. We can imagine that the granite works was quite extensive over there. Over this side of the canal, we've got the granite railway in situ.
They did some excavations because there was a sunken barge, well, there were several sunken barges in here which were just left when it was abandoned. They started excavating those barges, and they found not only the barges, but they found various other things. They found the granite walls, they found the granite tramways, and they realised that most of it was still here. So they rebuilt this crane here just to show you what it was like up here. It's absolutely fascinating. So like I said, this has been full, this area. You can see the puddling clay in the bottom. It's got a bit of water in now, but this is what I'm on about the problem is with clay. If you leave it to dry, it cracks really badly. So that'll have to be repaddled at some point. But they had a team that did this paddling, and they walked all the way through here, paddling this in the very old-fashioned way. They started to use cattle and stuff in certain areas, but the very, very original way was to literally for the navvies just to walk through the canal.
When we were clearing the basin and the banks of it, obviously we found lots more rails. There were also traces of the foundations of the original buildings which are here. That's where we found traces of the lignite and the materials that we assume were loaded on this side of the canal basin.
So on the end of the basin, you've got where the paddle would have been there. So what this was, if you look back over here, on the stream behind, you've got a point where water could be fed into the canal. So this would have been much higher at times. So just down here there was a sluice, and they'd be able to control the level of the water there, so they can put the gate down and backfill this so they could flood into the canal and fill the canal with water.
2024 is the 25th anniversary of the foundation of the Stover Canal Society, which latterly became the Trust. We became a trust because we needed a legal entity to sign a lease with Teignbridge Council to operate on the canal. We would very much like you to sign up as a member. It's very inexpensive, £10 for one, £12 for two at the same address. Not only does the money help, it demonstrates to our funders that there is a lot of support for what we're doing. There's a lot of support locally, but support nationally would be even more important to us.
So I'm going to leave that one here. It's been a really fascinating walk today. There's so much down here. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.